Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, the Dodgers missed out on yet another chance to sweep a series, settling once again for a series win with a disappointing loss. Julio Urias was unfortunately really bad, maybe the worst he's ever been in his career after a couple promising starts. We'll talk about his lackluster performance, how it might be affecting his upcoming free agent value, and we will talk about the guy who caught for him on Wednesday, Austin Barnes. And despite getting a hit, he is still having not just the worst season of his career, but the worst season of pretty much anybody's career. And we'll wonder if he's cooked. That's what's on tap. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Dodger fans. This is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Or even better, go and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. Then you can be an everydayer just like we are. If this is your first time with us, I am Jeff Snider. That guy next to me is Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like you are. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we're not quite insiders, but we're bringing the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. And Vince, once again, this is several times recently, we've gone into the last game of a series hoping for a sweep, and once again, disappointed in those efforts. Dodgers haven't had a 3-game sweep in a while. They did sweep the Angels in a couple 2-game series, but haven't had a 3-game sweep in a while. And so we had to settle again for a series win over the Orioles, which going into the series, I think if you had told us win the series, offense scores plenty of runs every game, we would have been happy with it. It's, we've talked a lot in the past about the best and worst ways to win a series or to lose a series or whatever. And I can't decide how I feel about win the first two and then lose the last one, because there is that comfort of going into the last game knowing, well, we already won the series. Worst case scenario, we still won the series, but losing that last game, it does leave a kind of bitter taste in your mouth.
Yeah, it's definitely the worst way to win a 3-game series. And now the Dodgers have done it, back to back. So you look at the road trip and they're 4-2, they won back-to-back series, but you still have that feeling of, man, they could have had 2 sweeps, or they could have had at least 1 sweep, especially, with the guy we're going to talk about, with Julio going on the mound for the Dodgers to close this out. The Orioles came in hot, but Emmett Sheehan and Michael Grove did a relatively good job of keeping them at bay. Julio, and they unfortunately was not able to do that, and we're going to talk about that. But yeah, it's one of those where maybe there's some mystique to the Orioles. The stat that was floating around was that they've never been swept since Adley Rutschman got called up, so maybe he just has a little bit of magic in him.
Yeah, maybe. It's once you've won the 2 games started by the rookie starting pitchers, have your purported ace going, you expect to win that game, and the offense did their part. They made Dean Kramer throw 37 pitches in the first inning. It looked like it was going to be one of those days for the Dodgers, and then it turned into one of those days for the Dodgers and Julio. The big issue was Julio wasn't getting anybody to swing and miss. You got to get some swing and miss. And against the Mets last week in his great start, he got a lot of swing and miss. I think I saw it was something like his 61st pitch or something on Wednesday. He finally got his first swing and miss. And, he gives up soft contact, but sometimes that falls in. And he also gives up some hard contact too. And without some swing and miss mixed in, it's really hard to get out of a jam if you can't get guys to miss the ball.
Yeah, I think finished 93 pitches and had 5 swings and misses. So it just wasn't there. Everything kind of added up and, didn't go his way. And we've talked a lot about, him already and how the stuff was basically the same as years past. He just didn't have that command, putting them where he wanted to. He was leaving fastballs a little bit lower in the zone than he's not used to. He's leaving, the slider, the sweeper, a little bit in more of the zone than he's used to, and things like that. And that contributed here today, because if you don't get the swings and misses, it's usually because if it was one of those where he wasn't getting swings and misses, but the Orioles were just beating him, pitch out of the zone, they were flaring it in, which there was a couple soft contact hits, but it wasn't really the case. I mean, a lot of the pitches that he was throwing were in the zone or right there, didn't have much sharpness. And it's kind of interesting, you know, the home and road splits, you don't want to really look at it, but now he's thrown exactly 37.2 innings at home and on the road. And he's allowed 9 earned runs at home, and he's allowed 33 earned runs on the road, 10 home runs on the road, 5 home runs at home, 14 walks on the road to just 3 walks at home. I mean, I don't know. Is he just likes the mound at Dodger Stadium? I don't know. I don't know if there's anything there to really show that it's a home and away thing other than those stats kind of bear it out.
Yeah, I don't either, especially because I mean his last start was in New York, and he had his best start of the year, and so I think there's something to being comfortable, and maybe overall he is more comfortable at Dodger Stadium. But I mean, he showed us just 6 days ago that or 5 days ago, he can pitch very, very well on the road. And Dave Roberts after the game talked about command, said the command just wasn't there. And yeah, it's the sharpness though that you mentioned. It's hard to us watching on TV, and not being like pitching coach experts. It's hard to say exactly, the TV angle is always misleading, especially for left-handed pitchers like Julio's changeup. Any left-hander's changeup, you can't really see the tail on it on TV, just because of the camera angles. So that it's hard to say how much the sharpness played a part, but he was definitely leaving too many pitches in hittable spots, and that's not going to work. And the Orioles, to their credit, I mean, they hit them, and pitchers get away with mistakes all the time. Maybe not as many as Julio had on Wednesday, but it's sometimes pitchers could have a day just like Julio had, and they would give up 4 runs in 5 innings instead of 8 runs. And we talked about it in relation to the rookie pitchers. If they could give up 4 runs in 5 or 6 innings, the offense will have a good chance to win. If Julio had done that, the offense would have had a good chance to win because they scored 5 runs. The bullpen didn't allow anything. And so we didn't know that we had to tell that to the veteran ace too. But yeah, don't give up so many runs. But it's the most Julio's ever allowed in one game. And so after 2 really good games, it's hard to know whether this is really a regression or a blip. And we won't really know probably until 3 more starts from now. Maybe he's really good the next 3 starts. And we'll look at this one as, he just had that one bad start in the middle of a really good stretch. But, unfortunately, we'll have to wait and see because maybe it's an issue. I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we really don't know. And it's one of those where we've seen good performances, bad performances, it's been a kind of a back and forth. He doesn't really have any good months, really. March he had the 1 start, 6 innings, 2 runs. And after that, his ERA, April 4.73, May 4.37, July 6.75. There's really not a lot of correlation. I think the one thing they talked about on the broadcast, and maybe there is something here, is pitching with runners on base. Last year and maybe a couple of years in the past, Julio was really good at limiting runs once guys got on base, and he's not having that same luck. But it's also not luck because he's not getting the swings and misses. He's not getting, he was never a big strikeout guy, but he, would strike out guys in situations where he needed to. He was able to, rear back and, give you a 95 every so often when he needed to kind of beat a guy up in the zone. He's not doing that. He's missing, like I said, the slurve is staying over the plate, the changeup, even, you look at his changeup, the image from today's game, and a lot of them are up in the zone. There's none in the bottom of the zone, and there's none like that are like slightly out. They're either way out or in the zone. So he's having struggles with that. And until he figures that out, he's going to be this because he doesn't have overpowering stuff. He has command of a lot of solid pitches, which has been his bread and butter. But if he doesn't have the command, he doesn't have the stuff to beat.
Yep. So we're trying to figure out what's up with Julio. The Dodgers are trying to figure out what's up with Julio. Other people maybe trying to figure out what's up with Julio are teams that might be interested in signing him in free agency after this season. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about what his performance so far this year might be doing to his free agent value. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Hey, we are back. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. We especially want to thank our everydayers, those of you who are with us either on the podcast or on YouTube every single weekday morning. We love talking with you. We love being here with you. And if you're not an everydayer, it's fun to join that club. All you got to do is check us out on the podcast or YouTube every weekday morning or as often as you can. Call yourself an everydayer. Even if you're only 90%, you know what? We're not going to check your grades. We'll count you as an everydayer. We grade on a curve. I want to remind you, you can catch every Dodger game. There's no game today. They have a day off, but when they get to Texas and start playing this weekend, if you can't catch the game on TV, you can always catch the Dodgers radio feed on Sirius XM or the SXM app. Just launch the SXM app and search for Dodgers. You can also listen to this podcast on the SXM app by searching for Locked On Dodgers. So, Vince, Julio has been mostly bad this year, had shown some flashes of being his old self, but mostly pretty bad. And it's his contract year. He's going into free agency. He's still very young. Like, he's going to turn 27 next month, August 12th, I believe, which I only remember because August 12th is the day the baseball strike started in 1994. So it's my least favorite date. He was born 2 years after that on August 12th, 1996. So he's going to be 27 years old, which is still very young for a pitcher. He's got relatively low mileage on the arm because of being babied at times and being injured at times. And so he should be in very high demand. And if he had hit free agency after last season, he would have been in huge demand. But, you know, obviously right now, what's his ERA? A little over 5, right?
Yeah, 5.02.
5.02. If he finishes the season with a 5.02 ERA, I think he's like maybe even trying to get a 1 year make good contract. 1 year, $15 million deal to bet on himself and hit free agency again at age 28. If he gets his ERA down below 4 into the high 3s, that would mean that he pitched pretty well from here on out. And maybe at that point, teams can bet on the history, can bet on him. It's hard for me to see him getting a $200 million deal, which seemed like almost a no-brainer after last season.
Yeah, it at this moment, you've saw a lot of tweets today talking about, oh man, they didn't think Julio was gonna have to accept the qualifying offer from the Dodgers in order to build up his value, but that's where he's hovering right now. If that was the case, let's just say he finished, an ERA around 5, and nothing more than, like I said, the stuff is the stuff at this point. He doesn't throw hard, so it's not like you're worried about diminished fastball per se. You're just worried about the command. If he doesn't figure out the command, it's probably a mechanics issue. And, do you want to bank on a guy figuring out the mechanics? I don't know. The other part of all this is we've heard about guys that go to arbitration and kind of are, teams have to argue against them and kind of use that against them. And I would assume it's similar in free agency where, Scott Boras is going to bring a bunch of numbers and stats, and, teams are going to have their numbers and stats. And, do teams look at how he's outperformed his FIP the last few years? I mean, 2021, he had a 2.96 ERA, 3.13 FIP, not that big of a difference. Last year, 2.16 ERA, 3.71 FIP. So a little bit more of a difference. This year, he's actually still outperforming his FIP a little bit, or before today's start, he was outperforming his FIP. I don't know how to look after today, but it's a matter of what are you going to bet on? What are you going to bank on? I think that he does need to have a good rest of the season, though, or an okay rest of the season and a strong run in the postseason in order for him to get what he was going to get. But I just don't think 200 mil in general, I don't think is going to happen. Just the way we've seen, Carlos Rodon is only made a few starts this year. That was more injury than anything, but still, we've seen, Robbie Ray right after the Cy Young got paid, not 200 mil, but, got a decent amount of money. He struggled, and now he had Tommy John. So, like, it's hard to kind of look at track record of pitchers the last few years and say, like, oh, yeah, I want to spend a lot of money on a pitcher.
Yeah, and the benefit Julio has over those two guys is being 5 years younger than they were when they hit free agency, which is definitely meaningful. And obviously, that's going to be a big part of Scott Boras's PowerPoint presentation. Is that guys like Julio don't usually hit the free agent market at age 27, but yeah, if you hit the free agent market with a 5 ERA, that's bad news. And I do think there's a chance, like, his overall season numbers are going to look pretty bad compared to the last 2 years. Even if he's awesome, he's got, I don't even know how many games the Dodgers have left. I'm not even paying attention to what their record is. Let's say 55 and 40. So they have 67 games left. So you figure Julio's going to get 13 more starts if he stays healthy. If he gets 13 starts and pitches as well as he did last year in the second half, which is like a 1.5 ERA, that gets him down to, I don't know, mid threes, probably. But if he did that, if he got down to the mid threes because he was excellent in the second half, I think it's easy for a team then to say, okay, whatever the problem was, he figured it out. And he's 27. We're willing to bet on him. Here's my question for you, Vince. If you're the Dodgers, are you thinking about approaching Julio and Boras right now and trying to buy low on an extension?
I don't know. I'm leaning towards no, just because, there's a lot going on this offseason. And, like we've said before, like one guy or one contract is not going to take the Dodgers out of the running for anybody because they can afford it. It's just a matter of, how they want to pay it and luxury tax and all that. But, it kind of goes a few ways. Like Scott Boras can be like, well, I can wait it out. I've gotten guys big deals before, even with it, like, Steven Strasburg. I don't think a lot of people thought, that he's going to live up to that contract. And I don't think a lot of people thought it was going to go as bad as it's gone so far. But, that's one of those things that's a tale of, oh, man, I don't want to spend that much money. So I think you would, like, broach it, but I don't think – I don't know what number you could settle at that would make sense for both sides that would agree right now. Like, 20 mil a year, 25 mil a year. I don't know if I want right now to give Julio 25 mil a year for more than like 5 years, just knowing that, he might not, he could not figure it out again. And if he doesn't, like I said, he doesn't have overpowering stuff to make him still relevant in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess for that to happen, it would probably have to be a case of Julio wanting to stay. Julio, obviously the culture, he's comfortable in LA as far as we can tell. But Scott Boras, you don't hire Scott Boras to help you sign a buy low deal. But I wonder if the Dodgers said, hey, 6 years, $120 million, and that's good money. It's right now, there's a chance that Julio's not going to get that on the free agent market. If he pitches the way he has so far this year, the rest of the season, he's not going to get that number, and so it's not even necessarily it wouldn't be a slap in the face, I should say. When we bought this house that I live in 13 and a half years ago, we made an offer, and we did our research with our realtor, and he figured out exactly how much the previous owners still owed on it. And so and we came in, and we found out later that our offer was almost low enough that they were so insulted they didn't respond. But it wasn't quite that low. And they countered with a number that was like $30,000 less than their original asking price. And, $10,000 more than we had offered. And we took it, and so it's finding that magical spot where you're almost defensive, but not quite. And I wonder if, 6 and 120 might do, and $20 million a year, obviously it's real money, but I think 20 million a year, especially knowing that Kershaw's 20 million a year, isn't going to last much longer. It's definitely not going to last those whole 6 years. Another hopefully a year or two. But who knows with Kershaw? But that's the kind of contract that the Dodgers in previous years have. They took on David Price for almost that much just to get Mookie Betts. And it could be something that pays off. If Julio does figure things out, it would be a huge bargain. But also, I don't know. I wonder if that might be right in that sweet spot where it's not quite offensive.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where he might want like 25, 28 mil. Dodgers could offer 20, and maybe they can meet somewhere in the middle, and we feel more comfortable with that. But again, I don't really see it happening anyways.
Yeah. All right. This episode, we noticed as we were putting together the graphic here on YouTube that seems kind of negative, and the Dodgers did lose a game, and all three of our main topics today are kind of negative. But we hope you all know we love the Dodgers, and we're actually feeling pretty good. They're in first place. The Giants did lose on Wednesday, so Dodgers keep their 1.5 game lead. The D-backs won, so the D-backs and Giants are back tied for second place. And the Dodgers are game and a half ahead of both of them. So we are happy. We love the Dodgers, but we are going to come back and be a little bit negative again in a minute because Austin Barnes is still on the roster, and we're starting to wonder why. So that's what's on tap. So please keep it locked on Dodgers. Hey, we're back. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. I want to remind you again, you can catch every Dodger game, the Dodgers radio feed on Sirius XM or the SXM app. Just launch the SXM app and search for Dodgers. You can also catch this podcast there by searching for Locked On Dodgers. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love to hear from you in the YouTube comments section. Been getting a lot of good comments there lately. And if you're listening on the podcast, we'd love to hear from you through social media or email or whatever. I forgot to mention, Vince, that last conversation about Julio's contract value was kind of brought to our mind. Listener Smitty at jsmith0808 on Twitter asked us if we think that the season he's having has hurt his value. So I didn't want to forget to mention Smitty. So thank you. We love hearing from you guys. So we will be doing a mailbag episode tomorrow. We'll be putting out a call on social media, but as always, you don't have to wait for that to happen. You can always send us your questions. We'll give you all the contact info at the end of the episode like we always do. Let's spend the last 5 minutes here, Vince, talking about Austin Barnes, who got a hit actually off Felix Bautista, who's very hard to get a hit off of. That raised Barnes' average to 108 on the season. When you raise your batting average to 108, that is not good. Do you feel like I have that right, Vince?
Yeah, that's probably right. I guess we can give him the caveat that he hit a ball that would have been a home run in 29 of other 30. Right, he's the one that hit that one of them, right?
No, Smith hit the.
No, today.
Today. Oh,
yeah. I'm pretty sure I was listening as I was in a meeting, so I didn't really see it, but pretty sure they said Barnes. Either way, regardless. It's July 19th. Austin Barnes has 11 hits on the season. Austin Barnes, even though he doesn't play as often, he has 102 at-bats, and you would think he would have more than 11 hits. He has 4 runs scored. He has 5 RBI. He's not really, helping out in much ways. And you say, but he's good with the pitching staff, and, he's good at framing and everything else. Well, he's not necessarily doing that this year either. There's a lot of framing metrics where he's right at league average or a little bit below, depending. If you look at framing on Baseball Savant, he's at 0 runs added or taken away. So he's just literally right there. If you look at overall defense, he's in the negatives because of his ability to not throw runners out. If you look at his blocking is below average, -3 this year. Or -2, he's always been above average in blocking. So there's not really any. And I guess the one thing you could argue that I've seen people bring up is, he's part of the staff and the game planning and everything else. Will Smith, Mark Pryor, everybody else involved will be able to handle the game planning if Austin Barnes isn't there. And, if they want to keep him around for that, there's always the good old, IL.
That's what I was going to say. Everything Austin Barnes brings to the table, he can bring to the table from the injured list. and more, it's go there. You don't got to worry about playing. You can just focus on game planning, collect your money. He's making $3.5 million this year. He's making $3.5 million next year. And you know what? 60-day IL to clear up a 40-man roster spot so that Hunter Fiducia can get called up. I'm pretty sure I heard that hamstring pop, Austin. Like and I mean, he's got pride. Obviously I have nothing against Austin Barnes. So like we should make that clear. Like I think you and I both really like Austin Barnes, and obviously rooting for him. We had high hopes in the World Baseball Classic. He went, what was it, 5 for 18?
Yeah.
In the WBC, which is solid. And who would have thunk that after getting 5 hits in a couple of weeks, he would get 11 hits in 4 months? It's frustrating, and I'm sure it's frustrating for him. And we don't want to kick a guy when he's down. I got accused of kicking Rougned Odor when he was down the other day when the Padres DFA'd him, and I put out a tweet about how the Dodgers shouldn't sign him because he's really, really bad at baseball. So I said, man, kick him while he's down. And I said, well, to be fair, he's been bad for a long time, and I waited till now to kick him. So, I want Austin Barnes to be successful. Austin Barnes in 2017, when he was actually the better of the two catchers, he got half the playing time of Yasmani Grandal, but had the same WAR as him. So he was twice as good as Grandal. But that version of Barnes, we've never seen again. And this year's version is just remarkably bad. He's got a 320 OPS. He's, it used to be, well, you could at least count on Barnes to run into, what do you have last year? He had like 8 homers or something.
8 homers.
Yeah. Like you could get 8 homers from your backup catcher, even if he bats whatever he batted last year, 180 or whatever.
200s.
Oh, in the 200s. Wow.
Yeah, 212.
Yeah. But, but getting some pop from him and good defense. But like you said, the defense this year, he's got a 9% caught stealing rate. The league average is 20%. And, which there is more base stealing this year. The previous years, like last year, the league average was 24%. The year before that, 25. So it's usually between 24 and 26%. This year is 20%. He's at 9. It's bad. And so like, there's nothing he's bringing to the table except, being everybody's friend, being a emotional leader, being the answer to the question of who would win a cage match, all that stuff. But as long as the phantom injury doesn't keep him from cage matches, I think he brings all that to the table from the IL.
Yeah, and it's one of those where, you're living in a world where it's not guaranteed you're going to win the division. And, it's not that he's like at this point, I'm pretty sure he's a negative WAR. So it's not like he's actively helping you. He's honestly actively hurting you. He's at negative 1.4 WAR. So the Dodgers would be up at least another game right now if Austin Barnes hadn't played all season. And like I said, nothing personal, but I don't know how long the Dodgers can go on with this. I don't know how long they can wait for it to turn it around. Honestly, if you do the IL, you bring up Fiducia if you want, or if there's somebody on the waiver wire, and just give him a shot, see if it works out. And if it doesn't work out, then go back to Barnes, and you're known for the worst.
Yeah, and often you'll hear baseball fans say, "Well, they should call up whoever. He couldn't be worse." And usually they're wrong. People say that about Max Muncy, yesterday's topic of how bad is he right now, and people say, "Well, call up whoever. He couldn't do worse." And we saw in whatever year that was when you had
21
Luke Raley and
Steven Souza Jr.
And Billy McKinney and who was the guy who was on our podcast and then he didn't get any hits and then they sent him to the Rangers? I can't remember. Zach Rex, like it's usually not true to say he couldn't do any worse. With Austin Barnes, it's true. Hunter Fiducia could not do worse than Austin Barnes has done. And yeah, it's if there's any signs of improvement, I'd be okay. Let's keep giving him time, but it's hard to be this bad for 102 at bats, and somehow he's doing it. So we love Barnes, wish him the best, but I wish him the best from the Phantom IL personally. All right, that's going to do it for today. Like I said, mailbag episode tomorrow, so start getting your questions in. Remember, you can check out every Dodgers home radio broadcast on SiriusXM or the SXM app by searching for Dodgers. You can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is at Vince Since 91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog, and the DMs are open in all of those places. Our email address is lockedondodgers@gmail.com. And our phone number for voicemails or text messages is 323-863-LOCK-5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.